I finally said, this is stupid. Like, we can't do this anymore. I learned really early on, like, leadership, it wasn't just about like push and push and push and push. You had to be knowledgeable. You had to trust the people around you. You had to build that community of trust.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Culture Works podcast. I'm Adrian Gostick here with my friend and co-author Chester Elton, and this is the show where we talk with executives, thinkers, and change makers shaping the workplace of tomorrow.
Yeah, we're here to talk to somebody who does something most of us just dream about. He walked away from corporate HR, not because he was burned out, but because he realized he could do it better on his own terms.
Bruce Nichols spent decades in corporate HR companies like Liberty Mutual, Fidelity, Citizens Bank. Now, as a partner at the Human Resource Consortium, he helps organizations rapidly transform culture by doing something radical, making first-line managers accountable for it. Hey, Bruce, we're thrilled to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, super excited to be here with you guys. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, we are too. And by the way, before we get going, we want to thank you for your service. I mean, 82nd Airborne Division in the U.S. Army, that leadership function, I'm sure it shows up in your work.
Yeah, I would like to say it does, and there's some days I know it does, and other days I think people wish it wouldn't.
I think you bring a lot of discipline and a lot of wisdom to your role, Bruce. Hey, we want to hear, first off, we're going to hear about an 80-point culture swing that you achieved in just 3 months, and why technology on top of broken systems makes things worse, and what it really means to build a people-first HR infrastructure. So we're going to dive in, first off, with this story that I think every HR leader needs to hear. You were Liberty Mutual, a working culture in a tech organization, and you achieved this 80-point swing in engagement. People are going, okay, no, that can't be right.
Yeah. No, you know what? I'm still stunned to this day, and I'm flabbergasted even. And I've kept up. And the funny thing is, I've really kept up with some of the leaders and the managers that were involved in this. I have lunch or grab a beer with some of these guys still, and not the executives running the group, but the managers and the directors that were involved in this. It was an amazing shift. And in what we really found is, we had I was relatively new. We had a new CIO coming in. And we basically sat down one day, and he's like, what's the problem here? I'm like, well, the problem is, we did all these surveys year over year. It's the same feedback. You can do any type of survey, and every year you're going to see 72% of the people don't agree with promotion process. And we don't do anything with it. No, we don't talk about it. We don't. And then all of a sudden we take it out of drawer and we just kind of, oh crap, we forgot to do this. What we ended up doing is he and I went out and we spoke to everybody. Like our first couple months of getting on there was just listening and sitting down with large groups, sitting down in small groups, every facility, every site. And we just heard feedback, across the board. Like, we don't know what the strategy is. We're writing code. What does it mean? Who cares? Or, the executive in charge of our division never shows up. We don't know who he is. And we think it changed, but we don't know. But it doesn't matter because he's not here anyway. We have this great architecture strategy and this, engineering principles, but we don't know what that means. So we just write our code and go on our day. And when we sat back, we developed this 5-point plan, and we're thinking, oh, this is going to be great. And we finally paused. And I'm like, we do this all the time. We just push it down, or we make our leaders responsible, go out and do this great work, consult with the HR people and consult with Bruce on the strategy. And we're like, nope, time out. We hear it, we see it, but we don't talk. We have almost 2,000 people in this organization. We can't be involved with them every single day, hear what's going on. So we grabbed a group, and I think it was about 10 to start, managers and directors that were scattered throughout the footprint, that really had, over the past couple of years, had shown up well, that people respected, had good results, and that we just knew that we could go to. And we said, okay, here's our thought process, here's our plan. And then they went out and took all of our feedback and came back with 5 points. And if I can remember all the 5 points, I would tell you, but off the top of my head, the one that always stuck with me, that is always generic, is we want to be the best place to work. How do you do that? So, I just remember her name was Corey. She's a director out in Seattle for us. And she just developed this plan around communication and talking to people and marketing what was going on. So all these other points that we had come up with that we're going to focus on that were really specific to the tech strategy, she's like, we don't tell people this. So there's no way for us to connect from people to the work, to the strategy, to the organization to understand what's going on. So that was the crux of it. It was like building trust, building communication, having this workflow go through these managers. Then they would specifically go out, and we had used and talk about the feedback. We used ENPS, and I'll be honest with you, if somebody gave me ENPS right now to look at, I'd probably get sick because it was, I'm not a fan. But what we ended up doing is people would write comments, and these guys were really smart. I say guys and girls holistically, but they started writing code because every single time we get the feedback, they would build out themes and categories from the feedback, tie it directly back to the scoring, go into the hotspots and the pockets, and then they would deliver the strategy and the communication directly to those hotspots. And then overnight, people were like, well, I said this in the feedback. I guess you're not pinpointing me, but why, we really believe in what you're doing now. So it was like this automatic shift in the culture. And then the managers would just own it.
Talk to me a little bit about gathering that information. Were the stories what was impactful? Was it the storytelling, or was it just being heard and people responding? I'm curious.
Yeah, yes, and the storytelling is important. And why? Why we're doing this? Why are we building this AI application? Why are we building this tool? Why are we going about this? And then why are we communicating? What is it like? All of that is so important to tell the story behind it. So it was, every time we came back to the room and these managers would present back to the steering committee and the executive team, it was, well, why are we doing this? Why is it important? And then communicate why it's important and why we're doing this. And then that ownership directly into the managers of, you've got it from this committee, you have a working group, put into the hands of these managers so they have this story and they can build upon it.
So one of the things that you talked about that you found just wasn't working anymore was that top-down culture push, right? Like it's coming from the top, just kind of do it. Talk to me about when you got together. What was that aha moment like when all of a sudden you said, you know what, this isn't working anymore? Who was in the room and what was the emotion?
You referenced my discipline and time in the 82nd Airborne Division because it was, for me, earth-shattering when I finally said, this is stupid. Like, we can't do this anymore. I learned really early on, like leadership, it wasn't just about like push and push and push and push. You had to be knowledgeable. You had to trust the people around you. You had to build that community of trust. And the room was like, the CIO plus his leadership team, and some of the extended team, like communications and public relations and finance people and anyone else that was, generally part of that large executive team. And we're going through this, and it was more of we keep doing this year over year over year. Just stop. And it wasn't, and I'll be honest, it wasn't just me saying it. It wasn't me like saying, this is stupid, we can't do this anymore. It was the CIO and I developing that rapport and me putting the words into him and saying, look, this has to be you. My job was to influence and to move on. And I influenced him enough so that he could sit back and say, yeah, you're right. I own this. I'll do it. And I'll push it down. And that changed the dialogue completely over the next, I would say, year.
So I remember reading a book, Communicating Change, maybe even 30 years ago now, that said we need to get frontline managers involved in communicating culture, change, etc. We've known this for decades, and leaders don't do this. HR leaders don't push this. Was there a moment that things just started to, is there a story you could tell us that a moment when you went, this is the tipping point? This is when it's really taking hold here.
I think the tipping point for me personally was that first push into like a senior level HR role and pulling together a team of people from across the organization that were going to reporting to me in a new process and new things. And I was definitely not the subject matter expert. I was smart enough to know that I didn't know everything and dumb enough to know that I thought I knew everything. That was that aha moment for me in organizationally, like understanding what my role is. And it wasn't to be the subject matter expert. It was to gather the smart people around me to make everything work. And then bringing that into Liberty, I always knew that I didn't have to be or wasn't going to be the smartest person in the room. I never was, and I'm never going to be. But the room's smart, and there were some good talent in that room that knew, and I just had to know enough of where to push. So I always carried that with me. It was like, at some point, somebody's going to have an idea. It's going to be revolutionary, and we need to integrate it, or we need to listen enough. And that, for me, like, I just always felt that way, and I just carried it with me, especially at Liberty. There's a lot of smart people there making really interesting decisions. There's probably somebody in that room that's only been there for a couple of years that should have a voice.
What I'm interested in is you've fostered sort of this culture of curiosity, right? It's like, let's ask the next question. There's going to be an idea in the room. Let's make sure we grab it. I was reading a wonderful quote the other day from Albert Einstein. He says, "I'm of average intelligence, but I'm passionately curious." So along that line of curiosity, I'm wondering, you went from like this senior level leadership owns the culture to the mid-level manager. How did you get the senior leaders to give that up? Because that is not an easy transition, right? I'm the CEO, I'm in the C-suite, this is what I do. And you're telling them, say, no, if you want the culture to really grab hold, middle management has to own it. Talk about that transition, and how did you get them to buy in?
Yeah, I always hate saying "I told you so." What ended up happening was we saw we had pockets where we had really bad scores, and we knew that if we didn't do anything, we were in danger of like losing tons of really talented software engineering people. When I sat down at one point, and I basically was like, it said to the senior leaders, I'm like, this group right here is broken, and we keep getting the same scores over and over and over, no matter what we do. And we've got this huge shift every place else, but here. Why is that? So why? Yeah. And being able to take people out of their seats, bring them to that environment and say, pay attention. Like, let's go there and figure this out. That was it. Like, let's go listen to what's happening. And this was an interesting group because we were like hiring people from all kinds of like startups and small software shops to do this really specific build. And then they would leave like a few months later. This was horrible. We hate it here. This isn't working. We don't like it. And we finally found out like we had to go down below the manager or the head of that organization, down into those middle managers or some of those software engineers. And you can't go out there like I'm the HR guy. Tell me what's happening, because they don't care. They're not going to listen. And they're like, you're just going to betray my trust. You can't go out and say like, I'm the CIO. You tell me now. So you really have to go in there with say, I need to build rapport and visit and be part of that organization for a bit. It wasn't that one division wasn't overnight. That was a lot of investigation, a lot of work, a lot of time invested just to dig into some of the root causes of the problems and to make management shifts.
It is. I mean, you got to get people opening up. And sometimes, I mean, that's why Chester and I and other people from the outside, and now you get brought in because sometimes, people won't open up to HR, and yet we need to hear those voices. There's a lot of distrust. When you're in a kind of a low engagement environment, we have to start building that trust, as you say, with communication. So I'm curious too, speaking of a curious mindset, you talked a lot about people first strategy, integrated systems, and you said something to the effect of, if you don't have a people first mindset, all the technology introduces is just putting junk on top of things, and you're exacerbating the problem. Help us understand that, because sometimes we feel like, technology is going to fix issues.
So at Citizens, I was asked to build a centralized employee relations team. And it was years ago, before the AI revolution and all these other crazy bells and whistles, that we were integrating some new tech into that group. And I just remember pulling people together and having this huge project team, but everybody said the same thing. The managers, the HR, the people managing the process, like, we can't manage this process. It's broken. We can't fire anybody. We can't hire anybody. We can't do this. We can't do that. And the process was just so bad. And everybody was angry because nobody wanted to do anything about it, and we couldn't figure it out. And so when we pulled it together and we're like, okay, we're gonna bring in this tech, we're gonna bring in this database, we're gonna use these call center tools, we're gonna have a soft phone, we're gonna bring people together. And we could have flipped the switch and started taking calls, and done all the reporting. but the process was still broken. And so instead of like rolling out this brand new thing, which we probably could have done in a few months, we spent probably 5-6 months just on gathering process and editing and going through and educating the team that was coming together on what the process should be, and then how we are going to involve the managers in the build of the process, not HR people, the people that were using the process, and then going back out and building the infrastructure around that, the community and branding. And, we use the term one HR, meaning that no matter where you were and what seat you were in, even if you didn't like the process, we're going to be one HR team, or we're going to manage us together as an organization. And if you roll that forward, it's the same issues. Like, companies aren't escaping these broken processes.
You are what you talk about, right? You are where you spend your time. So for other HR professionals and leaders that are listening, what was the problem with siloed HR? What was the big problem there? And why does that fail?
I'll go back into my Liberty Mutual example a little bit, because I was talking about that one group that was broken. And, we had payroll issues, meaning we definitely knew people who are software engineers. They were 2 years out of school and they were walking across the street, sometimes for 50, 100K more. Huge jump. So we thought we had a pay issue, compensation issue. They weren't getting the same, the benefits of Liberty were phenomenal, but they could go across the street to another organization and they got a lot of money. So they would take a little bit back and take the hit. So maybe it's a benefits problem. Maybe we're doing too much here, not enough here. And so when you start breaking it all down, like the onboarding process or the applicant tracking systems, all these things, like, are we bringing in the right people? We didn't even know if we were doing that correctly, because if they're coming in and they're being evaluated and assessed and screened properly, then they shouldn't be leaving in a month or two, because they know what they're getting. Well, all these chunks are broken. So if you look at that holistically, and you start breaking it out, what we did, a partner of mine and I, we had this group located with a branding and marketing team and the technology side all together. And we just started looking across what was the delivery from a business perspective, what were they looking to do, and then what were the pieces of HR that we needed to be relevant in. And then we started building a picture across all these different disciplines. I'm not a comp guy. I don't pretend to be. I don't want to be. I have no desire. But I did know that when I looked at comp, we were off the marketplace. In that 495 Boston belt, we were off dramatically. I knew that in pockets across the country that we were going to be off then. I also knew we had a management issue, and we had an onboarding issue, and we had an issue with screening applicants into the system, because they were, our managers were screening differently than the rest of the organization also. So they were doing something that wasn't gelling with the overall process. We integrated all of that across that map, across all of that, and having that view and being able to sit with an executive team and say, okay, here you go. Here's a full map view of this. So what part do you want to focus in on? Why? Like, why are we going to fix this?
Did you chunk it out the way you did it? Like you said, composite, or did you do it all at once? Because that would be radical surgery, right? Yeah.
All at once would have been insane. I wish. I remember going back, and I think the comp was the biggest driver. So we definitely have to prioritize. And when we actually started looking at this, our initial say, let's change comp and let's look at the structure here in this marketplace for this type of role. And then when you started broadening out, the expense was huge, but on the back end, we got the results from the community, from those engineering groups was huge, because they were like, okay, now you've listened.
Our friend Dave Ulrich's Integrated Systems, he's been talking about this for 30 years.
Yeah.
It's taken people like you to actually implement it.
Yeah.
And good for you.
Yeah. The tech has changed, right?
Yeah.
The tech, if you take it's kind of funny. If you look at just that philosophy from the 90s, I mean, Clinton was in office. I was jumping out of airplanes. Desktop computers were great. Nobody was talking about Gen AI. Yeah. But the underlying issues were the same.
Isn't it interesting? Because Dave Ulrich's work, I mean, it's 30 years old, but the principles have lasted. What's the biggest mistake HR leaders make when they buy their tech? Because it's easy to say, look, I'm going to buy this package. I'm going to get everything. What's the one piece of advice you can say? Look, when you're buying HR tech, remember this.
Yeah, don't buy it.
Don't buy it.
Don't buy it. Yeah, and it's kind of tongue in cheek, but yeah, don't buy it. until you're absolutely convinced of what you're buying and how it's going to enhance your systems already. Like there's a client we've been dealing with for the better part of a year, and they integrated this new human capital system, management system, payroll systems, and all this stuff. And they keep calling, saying, "I think we need you guys to come in and take a look at this because it's not working right." I'm like, "It's not the tech, and it really isn't. It's because everything underneath it is not working." And we need to come in, and they're like, "Well, we can't do that. It's too expensive." Okay, well, continue on paying a lot of money for something that's not working right.
Yeah, and then add that, how much that, it's so funny when you said that, it reminded me of the old, YouTube video where the guy goes into his counselor and says, he says, "What's your problem?" He says, "I'm an alcoholic." He goes, "Well, stop drinking." He goes, "That's it?" He goes, "Yeah, just stop.
No.
Just stop." What's the problem with HR tech? Don't buy it.
Well, so that leads us to our third segment is that walk us through. We'll do this one quickly because we're going to get into a culture challenge here in a minute. We'll all kind of debate, but take us through why I think it was a year and a half ago now, you created the Human Resource Consortium. Take us through why you created it, what it looks like, who you work with.
Yeah. So the Human Resources Consortium, I jumped on almost a year ago. And the rationale behind that was I met Regan Traub. She was the founder of this for 30 years, and she's been doing it for 30 years. She's a big fan of Ulrich. I think, she said, I have every single one of his books, some of them signed, and I've met him a couple of times. I'm a fan. And at first I was like, I don't know what that means, but fine. But what it ended up doing, the reason we clicked, and I went this route, she said something like, "We can make it better." And I fully believe that if we take a look at culture and strategy and put those two together with good process, we can change HR, how HR is done. And I was like, that's what I've been talking about my whole career. Like, we just need to change how it's done, and we need to align the strategy, make sure culture is lined up, make sure that everything we do from HR should be aligned to a corporate strategy, and the process needs to be sound. And it just makes sense. When I left Liberty, the initial take for me was, I'm going to go find another big boy job, and I'm going to go back in the marketplace, and I'm going to go on this interview. And I kept walking away from these interviews, and I'm like, I'm one of like 1,000 people they're talking to. I'm one of 100 that they're going to bring in. I'm one of 50 that's going to get a first or a second round. And I'm like, do I really want to do this? I'm at a point in my career where I don't care enough anymore. Like, I want to be part of the organization. I want to fix it, and I want to walk away, and I want to pass on the knowledge, and I want to move on to the next one. And I want to make the organization better. And then I don't want your HR job. I don't want to walk in and take your role. I want to make you better at it. And if you could take a little bit of knowledge from me, a little bit of wisdom, call it whatever you want, and integrate it into what you're doing, and I can make you better, fine. I win. I'll go do something else.
So when do you know it's time to leave? Like, when is that point where you say, look, I'm not, because some consultants say, hey, look, I've been consulting with this company for 15 years, and you kind of go, when does it end? You walk away. So when do you know? When is the right time?
I had a client some years ago, right before, because I was on my own for a short period of time, and before going to Liberty, and it was a CEO that I knew from Waste Management. I was the head of HR for Wheelabrator Technologies, and I had left that role to pursue some other things. And he brought me on. He wanted me to be his head of HR, and it was in like upstate, the middle of nowhere, New York. And I had my family was still young and in high school. And I'm like, there's no way. But I'm like, I'll go there every day. I'll fly up on a Sunday. I'll leave on a Thursday. I'll do the work, but I'll do it. I'll build the team. I'll look through all your systems. I'll help you with the succession planning. I'll help you with all the talent profiles. I'll get everything up and running. I was there for like 18 months doing this work, a real long time. The money was great. It was fantastic. But what I finally sat back and I was like, he said, well, I just need you to be here. And I'm like, no, you've got a great person. You've got a great system in place now. You've got a team that's functioning, and it's a family owned business that isn't really going to pay me what I think I need to stay here in the middle of nowhere, New York. And ultimately you're going to get bored here too. So he and I had established such a good relationship that I could have the open dialogue.
Right.
And I think that's how you know, is that you've got to build that rapport. Don't wait for the customer or the client to say, "Hey, we're done with you."
Okay, now Bruce, you've seen HR from every angle.
Yeah.
Let's tackle now, the three of us, something that we think is really fascinating. Where is HR heading in the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah. Yeah, I think we've seen the this movement towards outsource, insource, third parties, service providers, and I do think over the next 3 to 5 years we're going to probably still see that push for lower cost, centralized systems, and third parties doing a lot of the basics, and I think a lot of people looking to get an HR probably do themselves a favor by trying to figure out how to go down that path so that they have the fundamentals in place. I've seen a lot of large organizations, really start planting senior HR folks at the top of the house and with executives. There's a huge gap there now, where I think to get to those roles, I think some of those roles are probably going to end up being filled by business people that have good instincts around people and culture. And I think that gap in the middle is going to be filled by people like me that want to come in, help you with the problem, and then, pass it on to that executive team or that leadership or that HR executive and say, here you go, here's everything you need in a box, and we'll move on to the next initiative. I think, we can talk about AI if you like, but from my perspective, the whole AI push is a little dangerous because we're thinking it's going to fix the problem. And really, again, like what we're talking about is that it just enhances broken systems and broken process. So we're going to be really efficient at doing something wrong instead of fixing the house.
We're going to get it wrong faster. Is that what
Yeah,
you're
we'll
saying?
get it wrong really fast. So I can type it into Gemini now and it'll get a wrong answer, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I love what you're saying too about the embedded kind of HR that I'm seeing. I was just yesterday at the world's largest defense contractor giving a talk, and the HR leader there and the division vice president worked hand in hand. They brought me in, but we had multiple meetings beforehand. They were sitting together. They were lockstep. And that HR person I was speaking to afterwards, she's got an MBA. She's business savvy. She knows a lot about, the industry that she's in, as well as being people first, as you've said. I think that embedded idea is what we're finally seeing.
Yeah, the people first strategy is so important. And it's funny, we're saying it now. I had an HR executive that I reported indirectly to at Citizens, feels like 100 years ago. But she always said to me, keep the H in HR, like keep the human in HR. And she focused in on that. And that was 2 decades ago.
Wow.
Like it was there. And I think now we have to kind of keep that people first strategy, like making sure that if you're going to integrate tech, you're going to integrate AI, you're going to integrate whatever into your HR system, that you don't lose the trust of the people that you're working around, because there is going to be impact of jobs and roles and process and things. But as long as we can be transparent and communicative, it works.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay, we're going to go to the lightning round here, Bruce. Okay, so here we go.
All right.
This first thing that pops into your head. Best leadership lesson from your Army days.
Oh man. Sergeant Major John Mott, just before I was pinning on my gold bars as a second lieutenant, I said something really sharp and snide and snarky to him, knocked me into the dirt, and pointed a finger at me. He says, "You're not going to get out of this career alive." And people like, well, how is that a lesson? And I'm like, humility.
Right, right.
Humble decisiveness, being able to make a decision, own your decision, but do it with humility.
Excellent. One book every HR leader should read.
Don't read any business book at all. So I would say, Team of Rivals by Doris Kearns Goodwin.
Brilliant. I love that book.
Yeah, love it. I mean, it's got nothing to do with HR, but unless you really step back and think about what Lincoln had to do to be successful at that era in our history and the people he surrounded himself with, that's
it was beyond brilliant. Yeah. I love that you're a history buff. So am I.
Love it. Yeah.
What HR trend are you betting on?
I am betting on the outsource, insource third parties being more vibrant and busy.
Okay. Which leads to the next one. So what HR trend makes you skeptical?
Yeah, the whole technology AI push, that scares the heck. And I'm like, so on the HR consortium, they're like, oh, Bruce is our AI guru. And I'm like, I'm really not, because I try to read and study, but it scares me because we think it's going to fix things, and it's not. It's going to, as we've been talking, fix nothing unless we understand it.
Well, speaking about fixing, what could you, if you could fix one thing in corporate HR, what would that be?
Bureaucracies, like, just stop. Like, we have infused ourselves thinking that we're the master of everything, and we have to have a process over everything. Just stop with the process and have a conversation. And don't get stop. Just let's hear, implement, move on.
Okay, last question.
Yeah.
What does culture works mean to you?
I really think that if you're going to own, run, lead, and you want to focus on culture, you need to be in the culture itself. Stop managing and leading, be in there and be part of it.
Excellent.
Hey, if somebody wants to learn more about you or work with you, where would you point them?
Yeah, I would point them to our website, thehrc.com. They're welcome to email me, bnichols@thehrc.com. Those are the easiest things. I'm all over LinkedIn. I'm not hard to. I don't think I'm hard to find. I'm hoping I'm not hard to find, but I respond to everything, every message on LinkedIn I get. So I think those are the best channels for me.
That sounds great. Yeah, please, everybody connect with Bruce on LinkedIn. And yeah, thanks again, Bruce, for coming.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Send us off.
Yeah, a big wrap up here. For HR leaders that are really feeling burned out and put on and overworked and underpaid and all that good stuff, what advice would you leave them with at the end of this podcast?
Don't be afraid to step away. Do something else. For me, walking away and spending that time with my wife when I first was leaving Liberty Mutual, I spent a few months just running and playing tennis and refreshing.
Well, Bruce, thanks again for joining us. This has been enlightening. Thanks for your honesty and your service, and now your service to HR. So thanks for joining us. This has been a pleasure for us to learn from you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, my pleasure.
No, it's been great. And thanks for everybody who tuned in and listen. We've got pages of notes. I'm sure you do too. You get 2 or 3 good ideas. It was worth your time. Bruce, you've been a delight. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.